Alright, so from today's class, we'll talk about chapter 1, data and decisions. Alright, so our course is called the business statistics. Alright, so what is statistics? We say business have always relied on the data to inform decisions, right? To get this kind of decisions, we need to analyze the data so that we have some conclusions. And this procedure will be called the business statistics. All right, so we say today and in the future more than ever before, this is true. The business have always relied on the data to inform the decisions. The companies use data to inform decisions about virtually all aspects of their business, from strategy to operating to inventory to advertising to website design to a lot of other procedures, right? So the companies need the data to make their decisions on all of these procedures. But how the data is collected? For example, every time you make a online purchase, you think that they can collect the information about how much money you spent on this purchase, right? What credit card number and expiration date, your billing information, something like that. But more information is captured than just the details of the purchase itself. For example, what pages did you search to get to your purchase? Right? How much time did you spend looking at each? You can find that after your purchase, next time when you go to the site, they will recommend you similar products. That is our business statistics do, right? They use big data to give you more, much better experiences. All right, and another example, every swipe of your credit card and every click of your mouse generates the data and stores the data. These recorded values, whether numbers or labels, together with their context, are called data. All right, so this is how we call this word data. So data is not just a number. It's not just how much money you spend. Right? Data includes all information you collected from this purchase. Right? It doesn't matter it is numbers, labels, your address. For example, what pages did you search to get your purchase? All these information is collected together as data. Right? And the challenges of collecting, managing, storing, creating this data fall under the term of, we call it is big data. All right, so big data is not just normally we say the data is big, right? Although we call it is big data actually means this big means it collects every aspect of this purchase, for example, right? Every aspect. So this data cover everything. That's why we call it is big. It doesn't mean that this data covers has 10,000 people information. It is not that big. It means it collects all aspects of this information. That's why we call it is big data. All right. Okay. So since we call it is big data, how big it is, right? Although we say big data is all aspects of this project or the purchase, but it is also mean itself big. All right, so how big it is? Let's say, let's see, the ability to collect the data is growing exponentially. All right, so look at this word, exponentially. What does exponentially mean? All right, so if you are good at math, we say this kind of increasing, we call it is linearly increasing. All right, we say the linearly increasing is already growing fast, but what about growing exponentially? I can draw a similar graph, but growing exponentially, you will see an increase like this way. Right, so that means what? That means with the same time plot, it will be increasing much higher than the linearly increase. All right, so let's see how it is growed exponentially. I collect several pieces of detailed information to make you understand better about how our data is collected, how the ability is growing exponentially. Right. So first, every 2 days, you don't need to remember this. Right. I just don't want to show you why data is so important in nowadays. Right, so we say every 2 days we create as much information as we did from the beginning of time until 2003. All right, another one. Over 90% of all the data in the world was created in the past 2 years, just within 2 years. 90% of all the data we have in hand was created in the past 2 years. Can you imagine that? All right, next, the total amount of data being captured and stored by industry doubles every 1.2 years. It is not just for every year doubles. It means total amount of data will be doubled every 1.2 years. Right, next, every minute we send 204 million emails, generate 1.8 million Facebook likes, send, let's count, as 278,000 tweets, and upload 200,000 photos to Facebook. All right, so that's a lot, right? For every minute. It's not every day or every month or every year. It's just 1 minute. All right. So next, around 100 hours of videos are uploaded to YouTube. Of course, includes this one, right? I'm making a YouTube video now, right? So around 100 hours of videos are uploaded to YouTube every minute, and it will take you around 15 years to watch every video uploaded by users in one day. Right, so if you want to watch every video uploaded by users in one day, you will take 15 years to watch every one of them. All right, so what about the next one? If you burned all the data created in just one day onto DVDs, you could stack them on top of each other and reach the moon twice. So, how large is the data? That's a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot of data, right? Okay, and the last one, the company is monitoring Twitter to measure sentiment, analyze 12 terabytes of tweets every day, just to measurement to measure the sentiment analyze. All right. So I just want to give you a big picture about the data and show you that why data is so important in your days, right? In our period. All right. Okay. So next, let's talk about the role of data in decision making. All right. So there are let's say several definitions, but in this course I will not ask you to remember any definitions. Right? You need to understand them and get some idea about what is this. If I give you an example, you know what is that, right? So this is the goal of this course. All right. So first, in the field of business, obtaining actionable information. What happened? Actionable information from data collected is called data mining. More general, more generally, what does actionable mean? It means useful, right? So you can use this kind of information to make the decisions. Then we call it as actionable information, right? Okay. So we say to obtain this kind of useful information from data collected is called data mining. So this is the first definition I want to talk about. Right? We have already seen this in many places, in newspaper, in some other fields, right? But what is data mining? Data mining is just like collect the useful information from a lot of information to make your decision. All right. Okay. So next, uh, analysis of this data is called predictive analytics if it focuses on future performance. Right, so some analytics is about the in the past, right? But if you focus on the future performance, then we call it is predictive analytics. Right, and the next, business analytics, or we just call it as analytics, or sometimes we also call it as statistics. Right, so business analytics refer to any use of data and statistical analysis to inform business decisions. Right, so business statistics is just one field of big statistics. Right, so we will use statistical knowledge to make business conclusions, to make business decisions. Right. Okay, so here I have more information about, not more information, is a YouTube video about uh, how Varen's video explain why statisticians will be the sexiest job in the next decade. Right, so let's watch this video. This is very short one, about let's say about 2 minutes, right? So let's watch it.
I keep saying the sexy job in the next 10 years will be statisticians. People think I'm joking, but who would have guessed that computer engineers would have been the sexy job of the 1990s? The ability to take that data, to be able to understand it, to process it, to extract value from it, to visualize it, to communicate it. That's going to be a hugely important skill in the next decades, not only at the professional level, but even at the educational level for elementary school kids, for high school kids, for college kids. Because now we really do have essentially free and ubiquitous data, so the complementary scarce factor is the ability to understand that data and extract value from it. I think statisticians are part of it, but it's just a part. You also want to be able to visualize the data, communicate the data, and utilize it effectively. But I do think those skills of being able to access, understand, and communicate the insights you get from data analysis are going to be extremely important. Managers need to be able to access and understand the data themselves. You always have this problem of being surrounded by yes men and people who want to pre-digest everything for you. In the old organization, you had to have this whole army of people digesting information to be able to feed it to the decision maker at the top. But that's not the way it works anymore. The information can be available across the ranks to everyone in the organization. And what you need to ensure is that people have access to the data they need to make their day-to-day decisions. And this can be done much more easily than it could be done in the past, and it really empowers the knowledge workers to work more effectively.
All right. All right, so I just want to show you that how important is our course, right? How important is the data? How important is we use the data to make the decisions? All right, now we know what is data. Then we need to learn about the data, right? Okay. So next we say all data have context. All right, so let's look at this table. If I give you this table, can you give me some information about it? Right? How you make the summary about this table, right? So if your manager or any customer give you this table, what is the first thing you need to look at? All right? Okay, so first we say the data value or observations are information collected regarding some subject. Okay, so what is a subject? So a subject is just a case. Right, so in the table, right, we have the columns, we have the rows. Right, so normally we will have the rows as the cases, as the columns will be the variables. We'll talk about what is variables next. All right, so let's talk about cases, or we call some subjects. Right, so for each row, it will show you all the information about one case. The name of this order, the order number of this order, the state of this order, the price of this order, the air code of this order. So all information is about one order. Right, so how many cases in this table? One, two, three, four, five. So we have five cases. All right, and then for each case, we have how many pieces of information, how many aspects about this case. We have the order number, we have the name of it, state of it, price of it, air code of it, the album download of it, whether it is a gift or not, stock ID of it, artist of it, right? So actually we have how many aspects, how many categories? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. right? So for this case, we call this table have 9 variables. Got the idea? Right? Okay. So normally a data, or we call a data table, answer the 5 W's to provide the context of for the data. Right? For a data table, it will answer normally it will answer who, what, when, where, and if possible, it will explain why. And often we add how to this list. Right, so these information are important for us to learn about this data. Who are we are collecting from, right? What kind of information we have about this case? When did we collect this information? Where did we collect the information? Why we do this data table? And how we collect them? Right, so all of these information are important for us to learn about this table. Right, so normally when you read a table, you always have another text or word information to list all of these information, right? And as we said in the beginning of this class, we say the data can be numbers, can be names, and so on, and tell us who and what. All right. Okay, and then the next thing we talk about is the data often organized into a data table like this, right? Like a table like this, right? So normally we assign the cases as the rows and then the columns for the variables. All right, let's summarize a little bit. Right, so we just talked about the data table organization, right? We say the rows of a data table correspond to individual cases, or we call subject, about whom we record some characteristics, right? So these ones are the characteristics about this case, right? Okay. This is about the rows, and then these characteristics may be collected from or about a respondents. Right, so what is respondents? Will be individuals who answer a survey. Right, so if the data or the case is about a survey, it's about the individuals who answer a survey, then normally we call it is respondents. But if the subject or case is the people in the experiment, for example, when we test about a drug, then the people will be assigned into different subgroups for experiment. Then we call it is subjects or participants. All right, so we just gave different names for different kind of subjects. And last part will be if it is not people, not individuals, can be animals, can be plants, can be websites, or can be anything, can be any subject. Then normally we just call it is experimental units. So all these cases we just generally call it is cases, or we just generally call it is subjects. All right, okay. So for this part, I just want you to know that if I didn't use subjects or case, instead I use respondents, then you will know this data is about a survey. All right, if I call it is experimental units, then you know it is not about the people. This is maybe about animals, plants, websites, or any other things. All right, okay. So next, we say the characteristics recorded about each case are called variables, right? So we just talked about in this table for each case we have 9 characteristics, right? So we call it, there are 9 variables for these cases. All right, and then the variables identify what has been mirrored from this subject. So what are mirrored for this subject? For example, the first case, the number of it, the name of it, the state of it, price of it, right? Okay. And then we have already talked about whom, what, right? So we still remember we have totally 5 W's, right? We have already got who and what. And then why we still need when, where, why, and even how. Why these W's are also important. Let's talk about it. All right, so let's talk about the importance of where, when, and how. All right, so when you collect the data, why you need to give me the information about where did you collect this data? Is there any difference that, if, for example, if I want to know the average income of let's say the average income yearly income of United States in citizens, right? Okay, if you didn't give me this information about where did you collect the information, can I use the information or the data collected in Mexico to use as our report for United States? Of course not, right? Okay, so we say where data are collected is always important. Data collected in Mexico may differ in meaning than the data collected in the United States. Right, so it will affect our conclusion a lot, right? Okay, next about when. We say we still want to know about the average income, yearly income of United States citizens. But I want to make the conclusion for the last year, 2019. May I use data collected from, let's say, 1890? Of course not, right? Okay, so if you have a data table, you need to make sure that this data table can be used for your for the right when, right? Okay, so we say when data are collected can be important. The data that decades old may mean something different than similar values recorded last year. Understand? All right, so if you have any questions, be sure to just click the link for the WebEx. I will be waiting for you. All right, okay. And last one, how. Right, so what does how mean? How means how did you collect this data? Right, why this piece of information is important for a data table. For example, um, mm, let's say I still want to get the average yearly income of United States citizens. Um, but I got a data table, a collected information from Wall Street. Would this data table representative for the whole United States citizens? Of course not, right? So how you collect this information will be very, very important for you to make the conclusion. You need to make sure your data is collected to be representative for the whole population, right? Okay, so we say how the data are collected can make difference between insight and no sense. Right, to make inferences from the data you have at hand to the world at large, you need to ensure that the data you have are representative of the larger group. So here we have one thing to talk about. The data are collected and should be representative about the larger group. All right. Then in statistics, we call the data you collected is called the sample. And then you use this sample to make the inferences about the larger group, and then the larger group will be called your population. All right, so let's talk about some fundamental elements of statistics. We call the business statistics, so we need to learn about some fundamental elements of statistics. All right. Okay, so the first definition, population, right? We talk about population a lot, but the population in statistics is not always for example, the United States citizens is population, but one class of 60 students is also can be a population. So what is a population? The population is all the members of a group about which you want to draw a conclusion. All right, so here be careful about all the members. All right, so what does that mean? If I want to make the conclusion about United States citizens, then your population will be all United States citizens. If you want to make a conclusion about just my class of 60 students, then the population will be the 60 students. Right? So you need to make sure about which you want to draw a conclusion about. All right, so this is population. Then next element will be called sample. All right, so what is sample? A sample is a part of population selected for analysis. Right, so for example, if this is United States citizens, all right, if I want to study about the yearly income average for United States citizens, it is possible to get everyone's income and then get average of their incomes. Of course, it will be time spending, money spending, and worker spending, right? Okay, so for this case, we cannot collect every information from the population, but we still want to make a conclusion about the population. Then we need to select a small sample from the population. But again, we need to make sure this sample is representative about the population. It cannot be just about the yearly income in Wall Street, right? It need to be from, for example, it need to be from every state, right? I need to collect from every place, right? Okay, so sample is one part of population selected for analysis. So once I select a sample, for example, I select 1,000 citizens, and then I average their income to make the conclusion about the whole United States citizens population. Got the idea? All right, so let's talk about the relationship here. First, we want to make the conclusion about the population, but we do not have enough time, we do not have enough money to collect every information in the population. Then we collect a representative sample. Normally, we just randomly select the sample. Then we select a representative sample from the population and then analyze this sample to make the conclusion about the population. All right, so actually this process we call it is make the inferences about the population. All right, we'll talk about in the last one. Right, so now we talk about what is the population, what is sample, and then what is subject again. A subject is a unit contained in the sample with some characteristics. All right, okay, so let's come back to this table. See that actually we may have a lot of others, right, in our population. And then I randomly select 5 cases out of these others as my sample. Got idea? All right, so if you consider this table is a sample, these 5 cases is a sample, then each unit in this sample is called a case or a subject, right? So again, in this example, we want to get the average yearly income of United States citizens. Then we randomly select 1,000 citizens from this big population. Then each citizen in the sample is called a subject. Right? Good idea? Alright, so next we'll talk about variable. So what is variable? We have already talked about variables, right? So what are the variables? These ones, right? These 9 characteristics about each case is called the variables, right? Okay, so now let's come back. So what is the variable? A variable is characteristic of a subject that will be analyzed using statistics. Got idea? Alright, okay, so let's talk about the relationship of these 4 fundamental elements of statistics. We want to study or make a conclusion about the population, but we do not have enough money and enough time to collect every information in the population. So we select a sample about it. Right? And then each unit in the sample we call it is a subject. And each characteristic about the subject is called a variable. Right? Okay. So let's look at the variable details. Right, look at the detail information about each variable. Right, so for this variable, for example, the order number for this variable, these are all numbers, right? For this variable, they are words, right? So for this variable, they are states. For this variable, they are pure numbers. But for this error code, think about this, the difference between the price and the error codes. Although both of these two are what? Both of these two are numbers. But is this number the same with this kind of number? Think about it. Alright, and for this kind, right, this is another kind of variable. For this variable, gift, for gift, for the respondent's response, you only have yes or no, right? So you have two categories for this variable, two category responses for this variable, right? Okay, so we'll talk about this kind of variable. For these variables, we'll give different names about these different kinds of variables, right? So now just to get a general idea about a data table. Alright, so the last concept or the element of statistics I want to talk about is called the descriptive statistics or inference. Inference. Right, so we have already talked about that actually. We say we want to make a conclusion about the population. So we select a smaller sample from the population so that we can study about this sample, and then based on this sample we can make the conclusion about the population, and this process is called making inferences about the population. More detailedly, we say to make inference means to estimate, predict, or generalize about a population based upon the information contained in the sample. Alright, so here I have a picture so that you have more information or um, get better idea about what is going on. Alright, so now we have a big population here. Alright, we have a big population here. Alright, and then from this population, I can randomly select one sample and I can randomly select another sample. Can be totally different, can be repeated, can be any kind of sample. Both of these two samples are from the same population. Alright, and then based on sample 1, for example, I can get the average of the sample 1, and then I use this average to make the inference or estimate, predict, or generalize about the population. I can also use this sample to make the information or make the conclusion about the population. Right, so actually you can have many samples, but you can only have one population because you only have one population you are making conclusion about. But you cannot just collect all information about the population. So you randomly select two samples from the population and then just use the conclusions about these two samples to make the conclusion about the population. Right, so these two samples come from the population and then come back to make the conclusion about the population. Got the idea? Alright, so today we'll just stop here and then I will give you time to review all of the information. I will not, again, I will not ask you to remember any definition, but you need to understand. For example, if I give you an example describing the problem, I need you to know what is the population in this study, what is the sample in this study, what is the subject of this study, what is the variable, what are the variables in this study. All right, okay. So I will stop here for today's class, and next class we'll continue um, to talk about the two major types of the variables and other data types, and then I will give you some recommendations to what can be wrong about it. All right, so let's stop for today, and then next class I will continue with this chapter. And in the syllabus, I include three classes for this chapter because the last class, actually, let's say the last three classes. So today's class and next class we will cover chapter 1, and then the next class we'll talk about how to use jump. I have already included several videos in the canvas. Alright, so if you go to the modules, and then you should able to see the module 1 here. Alright, and then you will have the objectives. You need to rate the chapter 1 in the textbook. Alright, okay. In the last video, in the first class video, I have already showed you how to look at the contents in the e-textbook if you have only the e-textbook. Alright, and then you have the class notes here, and next class we will use this warm-up. Alright, this class will not for today. And then once today's video is made, I will upload here. You will have the videos here and then the assignments. So this page will be for the chapter 1. It covers 3 lectures. Alright, okay. So let's continue with the next video.